Hello and welcome to episode 103 of Page One, the Writers Podcast. I'm Marco.
I'm Tarek.
And thanks for joining us on the Page One podcast, where we like to speak to writers of all kinds about their writing careers, how they got into the industry, and try and get as many hints and tips as possible. We now have a bank of over 100 episodes, so please do go back and check the past guests. I'm sure there'll be someone that you're interested in hearing from.
Yeah, there's been some fantastic guests. This season alone, we've had some fantastic guests. Georgia Pritchett,
Ian Rankin.
How could I forget Ian Rankin? Mind blank there. That was
James Oswald last week.
James Oswald was brilliant. Yeah, it's been a really good season.
Anna Matsola. Yeah, no, there's been great guests this season, but also going further back. So please do check that out, as I say. But this week we have another fantastic guest.
Yeah, another great one to add to the list. We're chatting with Fonda Lee, who started off as a young adult author. She wrote Zeroboxer, which was nominated for a number of awards back in 2016. And then she wrote Exo a year later, but perhaps she's best known for her adult novels, Jade City, in the Green Bone Saga, Jade City, Jade War, Jade Legacy is the latest one. It's a really cool
really
mashup
huge
of fantasy
books
and
in
steampunk.
It's not even steampunk. It's fantasy, but not as you would know it. It's not medieval European fantasy.
Yeah, exactly.
And we talked to her about that quite a lot because, when people think of fantasy, they think of a sort of medieval Europe setting. They think of wizards. They think of all these things. But this is set in almost like a modern day world, albeit not this world. But there is some magic through the use of jade. It bestows powers on people.
Yeah.
And it's really like a gangster saga, a
it's
family
got a
gangster
mob
saga,
element to, isn't there?
Yeah, like a sort of Godfather type story.
It's a fantastic
mixed with some brilliant action scenes, sort of wuxia type, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon type fighting scenes as well. So really spectacular books that have won huge amounts of awards.
Yep.
Already in like the top 100 fantasy books of all time for a lot of people. So it was really interesting speaking to Fonda about all of that, about where she got the idea, and about as well writing outside your own comfort zone and your own experience as well. And what's needed when you do that sort of thing. So
there's a lot of fear that people have about writing about something which they don't have personal experience of, I suppose. And there's that dangerous, I suppose it's a danger on both sides. You can either stick to just what you know so strictly that you never write about anything else, and the opposite is you write about something which you don't really have any authority on and didn't sound authentic, and it's, how would you balance that?
I just think that, I mean, we do talk about this in detail with Fonda, so we won't go into too much detail here, but my own view is that, books would be so boring if people only wrote about things they know. There's a need to bring authenticity and to understand what you're writing about. I think that's vital.
That's the key.
But that doesn't mean that if you haven't personally experienced it, you can't write about it. As long as you've got a reason for writing about it. I think that's the important thing. But anyway, we're giving a preview of our discussion in the podcast.
The one thing I'll say before we go on is that people should stick around for the end of this episode because there's a very special announcement coming.
Yeah, so if you watched on YouTube or listened to our episode with Ian Rankin, you'll know there was or follows on social media, there was a big competition to win a number of books, including a signed book by Ian and some signed Page One notebooks. And the winners have been picked. The competition is now closed, and we will be announcing the 5 winners at the end of the episode, so please do hang around for that. But we'll play a quick advert for Page One, our writer's notebook, and then we'll be back at the end of the episode to announce the competition winners and also to let you know about next week's guest.
But for now, on with the podcast.
The blank page. To some, it's terrifying, an obstacle to overcome. But we prefer to think of it as an opportunity, a blank canvas to be filled with all of the adventures and characters in our head. So how to overcome that fear? Well, we all know the best advice for a writer is write. Seriously, get words on the page and more will follow.
But what about later, when you start trying to pull those threads of what you've written together? What about the character you wrote about way back at the start? Who was she again? What was she carrying? And where did she leave the MacGuffin that she now really needs in the third act? Think about all those top thrillers you like to read, or that amazing drama you just watched. What did they all have in common? Structure and planning.
As aspiring writers ourselves, we've tried many different methods to try and organise all the thoughts about the stories we want to tell. We've been there searching for a piece of scrap paper to note something down, or making a quick note on our phone in between meetings.
Or sometimes we'll make a note in whatever notebook we're carrying, or a document on our laptop so we don't forget that great idea. Let's be honest, it can all be a bit messy and it's easy to lose track of everything. And that's when we realised it's not just a story that needs structure and planning, but the way we gather all of our thoughts about it as well.
And so we made Page One. Page One is more than just another notebook. It's a place to put down all your ideas for your latest project, divided into easy-to-use sections that will help you plan your story, so that when that blank page comes calling, you're ready to answer. And then afterwards, once it's written, we realised you need to plan how to let people read it, so we included a section relating to submissions.
Each one is designed for one project, whether you want to write a book, screenplay, a comic, or any other kind of story. We truly believe that when you use it, it will help you get to the main event, writing your story. So we hope this helps.
We can't wait to read what you come up with.
And remember, every story starts with page one.
Did you always want to be a writer? Because I know you worked in business for some time.
When I was around 10 years old, I told my parents I wanted to be a writer.
Nice.
So I wanted to be a writer since around that age. And that desire has waxed and waned throughout the years. I remember really wanting to be a writer as a child, and then my parents saying, that's lovely. Make sure that you get good grades, go to college, and get a job that can financially support you. So that's what I did. And I threw myself into other career paths for a while, and always thought of writing as a hobby, something that was kind of a bucket list item, the same way that you might think, I'd like to run a marathon one day, but you don't think of yourself as a runner. You just think of yourself as someone who likes to run. And that's something you would maybe be able to achieve one day when you have the time and the wherewithal to do that. So that's how I thought about writing. I was pursuing my day job, my career in business, and I would write for my own enjoyment. I was writing just fiction on the side, fan fiction, and never really thought of it as a career. And I think I chalk that up largely to the fact that I didn't have a lot of role models. I didn't think that it was a real job, to be honest. I really thought, the writers are sort of a special breed of people, and I didn't know any writers. I didn't have any examples of writers, especially Asian American writers in speculative fiction. Everything that I read in fantasy, which was my genre of choice that I loved, was medieval Europe, and not at all, some didn't have characters or authors that I could relate to. So I was going along in my business career and reached a point where I had no time to write. Life got super busy. I had a demanding day job. I had 2 small children, and I had no time to write. I had barely time to exercise a little bit and like get 6 hours of sleep kind of situation. And
sounds familiar.
And you all reached that. So I kind of had I guess you'd call it a third life crisis, middle 30% life crisis, where I realized I wasn't, I'd lost something that I really enjoyed. And I was at this point in my career where I was supposed to be determining my next path. I was at a promotion juncture, and so my manager was asking me things like, well, where do you see yourself in the company in 5 years? And what track do you see yourself on? So I was doing all these like career visioning exercises where you think about what do you enjoy most and what are your goals. And through that whole process, the outcome that my manager most definitely did not expect was me thinking to myself, I don't want to do any of these jobs. What I really want to do is get back to writing. Because you answer all these questions like, well, what did you most enjoy when you were a child, and what comes naturally to you, what feels like fun, like writing. So
this whole time, had you been writing on the side then? Have you been doing stuff just for yourself?
Earlier on, so I had been, and then I had a fallow period of about 4 to 5 years where I didn't write. I didn't have time to write, and that was the point at which I was like, that was something I used to really enjoy, and I've lost it. I want to get back to it. So instead of recommitting myself to my day job and stating that I wanted to be a director in 5 years or whatnot, I said, actually, I'm pretty happy at this level. I just want to, I want to actually cut back on my hours. And my manager was very supportive because she thought, she needs, time to spend with her family. But I did not spend that with my family. Instead, I started taking writing classes and working on a novel manuscript. So that's what I did for a couple of years. I said, I'm going to try and get published, because that was always the dream that I had in the back of my mind. One day I was going to write a book.
Yeah.
So I became serious about writing for publication, and I started working on a novel manuscript, and I wrote a novel. I took writing classes on the side, and then I queried that novel and started to get a little bit of interest. I had a few requests, full requests, and in the meantime I started writing another novel. And I wrote that novel, and I brought it to a writing conference where I got a lot of interest, and then landed an agent, and that became my debut novel. And at that point, I started to transition out of my day job and find ways to make writing my main focus. And it took a little bit of time, but I went part-time in my day job so that I could spend more time writing. And then eventually I wrote and sold another novel, which became a duology. And I quit my day job, but then contracted back as a consultant so that I could take projects for several months at a time, and then not take a project for several months so I could work on my novels. So I am one of those cases of someone who wanted to be a writer very early on, and went and did other things, and then came back and reclaimed that ambition.
And you said you there that you did writing classes as well. I mean, did that, how important in the development of your writing do you think that was?
I think it was important for two reasons. The first was just the discipline of doing it regularly and considering it as a serious commitment. So when I started really wanting to make writing a part of my schedule, part of my life, having a class where I knew I had to turn in something every week was helpful for instilling that self-discipline. And it's something that, writers have to have even when you're established and you have, at this point I have 6 novels out. I still have to find that self-discipline of okay, what's my schedule so that I can hit my goals? Because unlike most jobs, you don't have someone who's checking in on you every day. You have to do that. So the writing classes and having a curriculum that with expectations helped me to do that. And then the other thing it did was just normalize it and help me to find a community of other people who were also striving towards this goal. Because sometimes it seems like, everyone and their dog has a book idea and wants to turn it into a novel. And then there's only the small percentage of people who are going to follow up on that. And one of the most valuable experiences I had before I was published was I went to a writing workshop. It was a week-long speculative fiction residential writing workshop called Viable Paradise. It's happened every year for many years, but takes place on Martha's Vineyard for a week.
Oh,
And
lovely.
and it's
I see the appeal.
It is, and I've gone back to that workshop now as an instructor, which is a wonderful feeling.
Brilliant.
To come back around full circle. But
Awesome.
that was really valuable because for 1 week I was just with other people who wanted to do what I wanted to do,
Yeah.
who understood that this wasn't a pipe dream. It was something that really was a serious goal, and you see other people who are taking it just as seriously as you, and you see established authors who've made it, who are where you want to be, and that's really valuable when you're starting out.
And another aspect of that, I suppose, is was that the first time when you're attending these things? I've found with my own writing, getting critiques from people that aren't your friends, your family, can really help open your eyes to how to fix a story, tighten it up, and things like that. I mean, was that part of the experience as well?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. The sharing your work and being humble about it,
mm-hmm.
and thinking about it not from your own egotistical perspective of just this is something that I'm doing for myself, but also with the idea in mind that someone else is going to read this, and you are crafting an experience for someone else, is a mind shift that you have to make when you want to be published. And yet you have to hold on to your own vision of the story as well. And you have to be able to hold both those things simultaneously. What do I want out of this story? What's going to make me happy? Why am I writing it? As well as what's the reader experience, and how is an agent, an editor, and eventually a consumer going to experience this? So you'd like many things in writing and publishing. You have to wear different hats. You have to be, you've got your writer hat, but you've also got your marketing hat, if you will, and also be able to hold the contradictory attitudes of confidence, and like, I have something important to say, and yes, I should be published, and my words are worth something, as well as this is when you're hit revision, well, this is crap and I need to tear it down and rewrite it from scratch, and be able to hold both of those possibilities in your mind, and not kind of break under the conflict between them.
Now, Zeroboxer was your first novel that came out. But am I right in saying, did I pick you up right in saying that you had a novel, you'd written a novel prior to that?
Zeroboxer was my debut,
and
I had written about 1.5 novels before that one, that are now not to see the light of day.
So what happened with those ones? I take it you wrote it, and then did you try and get that one going somewhere and didn't find anything?
So I wrote one novel that I thought of as like a practice novel, and that I didn't intend to get published. I was just trying to figure out like the shape of a novel, and how to do one. And then I wrote one that I did query and sent to agents, and that got some interest but didn't end up selling. And then Zeroboxer was the one that sold. And
then I think it's fair to say your big breakthrough came with Jade City, which is, I've seen described as a Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon meets The Godfather, which is certainly a unique pitch for a novel, I think. Where did that idea come from?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I guess I'll mention that Jade City was my third published novel.
Mm-hmm.
And there's often, I think, a preconception among early career writers that you have to break out with your first novel. Like, your debut is it. And it's a make it or break it book. And there's some truth to that, because having a strong debut is absolutely beneficial to your career. It sets you up for success, and you get, if you're able to see success with your debut, you're much more likely to be able to publish books after that one. At the same time, I think especially early career writers who are trying to sell their first book, put a lot of pressure on that first book in terms of, well, gosh, like, this is it. This is my one chance. You know, it may not happen again. And I think that may be counterproductive, because my debut novel was not my breakout book. It did fine. It earned out, but I sold it for a relatively small advance to a medium-sized independent publisher, and won some awards. It ended up on some state lists, but it was by no means, a breakout. And I now look back on it, and I'm still extremely fond of that novel. But I got so much better as a writer between when I wrote that novel and when Jade City came out. Jade City came about because I was, first of all, it was my first adult epic fantasy novel. So my previous novels had been young adult science fiction novels. And I had this really a sort of an aesthetic, a vibe to the world that came to me first. So back in 2014, so this would have been before my debut novel came out, I was brainstorming in one of these skin notebooks that I carry around, and I wrote just the title. The title came to me, Jade City, and the premise, which I jotted down underneath it, which was a world where I wrote a modern gangster family saga, and then I said something like a world where magic jade confers power to those who can wield it, and then a couple of the notes, and then I said, I have no plot, I have no characters, I don't know where this is going, and that's all. And so I left that. It stayed in that form in my notebook for a couple of years, but it didn't leave my head. So I now am at the point where I whenever I decide what project to work on next, I think about the ideas that refuse to exit. So you have ideas all the time, right? As writers, we're usually no lack of ideas, but oftentimes they pop into our head, and like 3 days later, we're like, what were we thinking about? That makes no sense. And they exit just as quickly. But the ones that stick around are the ones that are kind of screaming to be paid attention to. So I started working on it and fleshing it out. And it really was a case of the world and the premise was really strong in my mind. The vibe of this modern fantasy, like taking from a bunch of things that I loved, including gangster cinema and kung fu movies and wuxia, martial arts, adventure, and epic fantasy, and taking these things that I enjoyed and mashing them together in a way that felt organic and real and grounded. And I knew from the start that the core of this story was going to be this family drama, this family saga. One of my favorite films, no surprise, is The Godfather, but not because it is necessarily a gangster movie, but because it's a family saga in which the characters happen to be gangsters. So that's kind of the inspiration point for that story. And when I wrote the Green Bone Saga, I had no idea if it would sell, because I was under contract for this YA duology that I was working on, and I was entering a new genre. And I'd always wanted to write both adult and young adult. So I'd been working on this adult project, but that meant going out on submission, and no idea if it would sell, if it sold, whether it'd be one book or more books. So I had to really write it from a place of faith and thinking, well, if this goes nowhere, at least I'm enjoying myself, and this is what I want to see. And it really was the book that I wanted to read that I couldn't find on the shelf, and that I wrote because I wanted to read it. And fortunately, we found a great editor and home for it.
And why do you think? I mean, as you say, it's the first in the Green Bone Saga, and it's just had such incredible reviews. It's won so many awards, and it's been such a big hit. And what is it you think that made it connect with so many readers? Is it the kind of non-traditional take on fantasy, the kind of, as you say, the kind of mixing of these usually completely separate genres you kind of mash together? Is it, what is it about the book that's really captured people's imaginations?
It's interesting that you ask that, because I actually think the fact that it is a non-traditional fantasy and that it is this sort of cross-genre blend made it harder to sell initially. So it was by no means a hit out of the gates. Its success has been a slow build that has been driven very much by word of mouth. Okay. And by the enthusiasm of readers and reviewers that I have been lucky enough to get, because it was not, and it wasn't the sort of thing that could just be easily slotted into a subcategory. Yeah. People have said, well, it's not traditional medieval fantasy. It's not urban fantasy exactly. I mean, it is, but it doesn't fit kind of the accepted or common perception of urban fantasy. And because it's not our world with kind of hidden magic world, it's a completely different secondary world. And so it wasn't easy to comp. You know how publishing loves comps, right? It loves to say it's this meets this. Yeah. And it was hard to say, well, it is like some other title, because there wasn't anything to comp it to. And so it was, there was, I think that the reason it has grown to the level that it has is because of the enthusiasm of readers for these characters and for the world, but especially for the characters. I think even though it's set in a secondary world and there's this magic element, it really the story comes down to the relationships between these family members, and obviously this family is a lot more violent than most, but there's so much to relate to in terms of the struggles they go through, the experience of these characters trying to navigate their own desires with the duty and the obligations that they have to their family. There's a character who leaves home and goes and lives in another country in a diaspora community that has resonated with a lot of readers. And I also think that a lot of people were uncertain of reading a epic fantasy novel that is set in a secondary world, but in a modern day setting. Yeah. But once they did, it worked for a lot of people, because there's no reason why you can't have an epic fantasy that's set in this case, analog of kind of late 20th century, pre-digital era, but really recognizable in terms of guns and cars and streets and restaurants. And I just had so much fun building that world, because there is so much of texture that can come out in terms of just creating the city and naming the restaurants and describing the food that people are eating, the brand names of the cars and all of that. So I think I really do think that I really have to just honestly thank people who fell in love with these characters and with the premise of the world, and spread the word to their friends.
It's funny because actually, with a number of guests that we've spoken to recently, we've sort of been asking the same thing, which is that publishing has this very sort of fixed in stone idea of what it wants. You'll hear editors and agents saying, we want something new, we want something different, but in fact what they actually want is a tiny little twist on something that's already existed most of the time.
Yes.
Otherwise, they don't want to take the risk. So, yeah, it's interesting to hear that Jade City started slow and then it obviously built up by word of mouth. And it does seem to me that people are more, they may not even know it, but they're more open to different kinds of stories than publishers and agents think that they want. I'm thinking even on TV, you know, with streaming services, you've got a lot of foreign stuff. You've got the sort of Korean stuff like Squid Game and stuff. You've got Scandi Noir. All of that stuff is, people are suddenly realizing that they don't mind subtitles and they enjoy these stories that are a bit different from what they've traditionally grown up with. So do you think the industry is changing a bit and will be slightly more open, but very, very slowly?
Yeah. Publishing is very slow to change.
Yeah.
It is like a large ship that is difficult to move because it has its established ways of doing things. It's a very old industry.
Mm-hmm.
And it to your point, there is this unhelpful cycle of, well, you know, we don't know how to sell that, so we're not going to take the risk.
Yeah.
So we don't take the risk, so there's no track record. So we're not going to try. You know, so there's this cycle of being safe and going with the things that have established track records. And you're right. And we hear that kind of hypocritical talk a lot. We want something fresh, we want something different, we want something new, but not too fresh, different, or new. You know, just what we want is we want something that we can compare easily to something that's already a hit, but that is slightly different, so that we can sell it as fresh and new while tapping into an already existing large base of readership. But the reality is that you know, and I know this from coming from a business background, marketing background as well, is people don't know what they want until you give it to them and you show them what's possible. So if you're producing something based on like the wagging of the dog's tail, you know, you're only ever going to be kind of chasing the last thing that was popular. And once people see what's possible, that kind of opens the floodgates. And I do think that these last, I would even say 5 years in genre fiction have been an opening of floodgates. I do not think Jade City would have been published 10 years ago, even. The market wasn't there. Like there just was, it's a different landscape now than it was, which is wonderful. And I think it's not just in publishing, but it's cross media in the last 5 years. And you mentioned Squid Game, right? And you know, people have talked many times already about Black Panther and now Shang-Chi, and like the fact that once you have people who are willing to show you what's possible, then the doors open. But it is a hard path to like pry that door open. And I feel like I was, you know, I'm fortunate to have been kind of a part of that wave and to still be part of that wave of you know, the genre broadening and the idea of what speculative fiction, what fantasy and science fiction can be, really becoming more mainstream and a lot broader, and just more encompassing, really. And that's great, because it means that, you know, there's much more room to create in and much more choice and possibility for readers.
Now Green Bone Saga, obviously it has elements of Western and Eastern storytelling, and I wondered, you know, and it's obviously much more than just lip service or surface level. You know, it was important to you that you wanted to respect both traditions, you know, and really put a lot of effort into into not just doing it for the sake of it and actually spending the time and the research, etc., to tell the story properly and to cover both sides of it equally?
Well, for me, it came from just a personal place of inspiration. As I'm a second generation Asian Canadian American. I was born in Canada. And I grew up consuming Western media. All the traditional epic fantasy, Martin Scorsese movies, that was 100% my diet for my childhood. And my dad was always trying to introduce me to Eastern storytelling traditions. And, he introduced me to I remember Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon came out, and I was just, I loved that movie. I'd never seen anything like that before. And my dad was like, oh yeah, if you like that, here's like 25 other things, all these books, many of which, he had to hunt down English translations for me. And so then that I really sort of in my teens and 20s started to consume a lot more stories from Eastern cinema, and like watching Hong Kong crime dramas and kung fu movies, and rediscovering kind of all these things that my dad tried to show to me when I was younger, but that I completely rejected. So I'm very much a product of just consuming stories from both Eastern and Western tradition. And that just felt like a very natural place for me to go when I was writing my fantasy story, because I've not lived in Asia. So much of my conception of Asia really comes from the stories that I consumed from media. And so that was, I wouldn't even say, like, it wasn't a like, oh, like this will make my story cool or different. It was just, hey, what do I want to see? And like, what's really influenced me personally? And I wanted to write from a place that felt true to myself in terms of what excited me. And I've said this before, I feel like the Green Bone Saga is a very Asian American story, because it is that kind of bicultural blend of inspirations.
And do you think that someone, to be able to tell that kind of story, is it important to have first-hand experience of that kind of culture, or is it something which someone could research, or is there we were chatting with Matt Ruff a while back, who wrote Lovecraft's A Country, and obviously that's about kind of the racism in the South, and he's a white author, and that's an area which a lot of people would have a lot of nervousness writing about, something which they hadn't really personally experienced. And I kind of wonder what your view was on writing books which are really kind of set in a kind of cultural pot, and how much of an experience an author needs to have to be able to write about something that's maybe outside their wheelhouse.
Yeah, I think that this is a question that every author has to answer for themselves. I don't think there is a blanket answer to this. I firmly reject the idea that you cannot write outside of your own individual background or experience. I also firmly believe that the work that you do should be something that you are suited to write, and that you have to be coming from a place of authenticity in some way. So I reject both extremes of the, you have to stay in your lane. I don't believe that. I also believe that, like, it is important to be treating your subject matter with from a place of respect and sensitivity and personal connection. And that's why the answer is different for every author. And it is not, by the way, just an issue for those who, let's say, an author who's white who wants to write a character who comes from a different ethnic or cultural background than them. I mean, I'm writing an epic fantasy that is set, that is inspired by Asian countries and cultures that I haven't personally lived in. I have largely, I have a connection to it through my family history. But even, trust me, even authors of minority cultures and ethnicities struggle with it, because they face that question of, oh, am I Asian enough? to write this, or like and any sort of gatekeeping or identity policing is really counterproductive to this whole issue. But I think all I can say is that whatever you're writing, ask yourself, why am I writing this? Why am I the right person to write this? And that may be a different answer. I mean, you may be somebody who has a really deep cultural understanding of a place because you have lived there for 15 years. Even maybe if let's say you're writing about Japan, but you're not Japanese, but you've lived there for 15 years. I mean, you have an insight there that might give you, a huge advantage and a reason to write. Or, you might be somebody who, like me, has not lived there, but you have, the connection and the, personal reason to want to write that. So I really think it is an individual calculation and decision for everybody. You've got to come at it from the right place.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And earlier you said when you were starting to write Jade City, you had fun sort of constructing that world in, presumably at the start of the whole project. And when you read the books, it comes alive. It's almost like another character in the book that it becomes as familiar as the characters to the reader and things like that. I mean, when you're planning something like that, how much, what comes first, and B, do you spend as much time on the world building as you do the characters and things like that, or does that kind of start to come naturally as you work in that world?
It's a very iterative process, and it depends on the project, because sometimes the story comes to you as a character first. And that's the first thing that pops into your mind. Sometimes it's a plot point that comes to your mind first. Sometimes it's the world that comes to you first. And you take whatever comes to you first and you start to accrue additional material around it, like a snowball gathering. So, and in the case of Jade City, the world came to me first. And so once I had kind of the bones of how this world worked, I started to create the characters that I wanted to see in this world, whose stories I wanted to tell. And then what I wanted to do with the plot and the characters then fed more into how I developed the world. And it all kind of, became very much a back and forth conversation between what I think of as like the three pillars of story: plot, character, and world. And that process is a lot of fun, because you kind of have to stay open to doing world building and developing in parallel with developing the plot and with the process of developing the characters. And I usually, I love world building. I'm a world building junkie. And so I tend to spend a good 6 to 8 weeks before I even begin writing page one, just doing research and development and outlining and world building. And I then when I start writing, I'll hit places where I might have to pause and go back and do some more work. Or, in the revision process, I'll come across things where I'll have to do more research, and that'll lead me to develop other areas. So like a good example of this in the Green Bone Saga is when I started writing Jade City, I had a vague idea of the outside world beyond the island of Keikon, but I didn't fully flesh it out. I just knew that Jade is this really important resource, and it influences the trade that this country has with its outside partners, and that there was this other big country that was kind of a Western power analog, and they buy Jade from Keikon. So like I knew that was part of the background of the story that was being told in the first book. but I didn't develop like the entire geography of Hispania and what the cities were and all of that until I hit book 2. And once I knew that it would be a trilogy and I was under a 3-book deal, then when I hit the second book, I'm like, okay, well, I've already sort of set up this background of the international geopolitical dynamics in the first book. And now I can go and explore that and do the world building for all that. And how am I going to develop that in a way that serves the story that I want to tell? So it is very much there's not really kind of like it's not a chunked process. It's very much like parallel processing all of it.
And it sounds like you do a lot of work, kind of research work on the world before you start writing. Is it a similar thing you do for the plot? Do you plan out where the plot goes, or does the plot just kind of come to you as a process, as a part of having worked out the world?
I do plan. I do tend to be an outliner and have a rough outline in place when I start writing. For me personally, I need to know where the story ends. Mm-hmm. That's how I can begin. I won't start writing a story until I know where I'm headed. I know there are authors out there who just sit down, they start typing, and
I don't understand.
Bless them, I don't know.
Crazy
I don't
people.
know how they do it. Yes, that it's a mystery to me. But I need to know the destination, and I need to know kind of some of the main turning points in the story. In the same way that, like, if I said I'm going on a trip, I need to know, hey, I'm going to drive to Los Angeles and I'm going to stop at San Francisco along the way. Like, so I made the exact path that I take, I don't know yet. But I do need to know some of the big moments. So Jade City is a great example of this. I knew how it would end. I knew some of those big turning points right off the bat.
And are you someone that tries to get quite a clean first draft, or do you try and get the draft out of the way and then revise it after that?
Yeah. My first drafts tend to be relatively clean. I am not a fast first drafter. I have tried to do NaNoWriMo. I have failed multiple times. I have, and my failed NaNoWriMo projects have turned into published novels. So anyone listening out there who struggles with NaNoWriMo, you do not need to be good at it in order to become a published author. I tend to draft fairly slowly, but my first drafts tend to be relatively clean. And there's times though that I just have to throw caution to the winds and vomit out stuff as quickly as I can because I'm in a tough spot and I just need to write around something. But for the most part, I am a pretty slow and steady writer.
That is quite a useful piece of advice, isn't it? Because sometimes when you're writing, you can get stuck at a point, and some people will sit there for days sometimes trying to fix that bit, but it can be helpful just to sort of jump over it almost and think, I'll come back and fix that later. Yeah,
definitely. I've done that before. I've also written out of order. Each of the 3 books in the Green Bone Saga necessitated a different approach because Jade City was a pretty linear, straightforward writing process. But Jade War, there's a whole section of this book that takes place in another country. And it was difficult it would have been difficult to write it jumping back and forth.
Yeah.
So I wrote multiple chapters in this other location with this other character and wrote the whole other stream. And then I would stitch them together and figure out how to break them up so that they worked chronologically. And sort of like filming a movie, like you try to film all of your shots in one location and then all your shots in another. So that was Jade War, and then Jade Legacy, which just came out in November, was this this novel that covered this large amount of time chronologically, and holding it all in my head. It's a 700+ page book, was just brain smashing. in its complexity. And so I broke it into smaller pieces. I had to think of it almost like seasons of a TV show. So I would write the first quarter of the book and then stop and review that first quarter.
Okay.
And kind of do a 1.5 or a second draft of that section before I moved on, because that whole section had to hang together before I could jump 5 years in the future and do the next section. Yeah. So each of those, that's just in the same trilogy that I had 3 different writing experiences. So every book is it's like raising kids. Like you think you got it nailed after the first one, but no. Not that way.
Don't tell Tarek that he's just had his first one.
It gets harder.
Oh, congratulations!
And you've got the prequel novella coming out in April, and I kind of wondered: is this going forward? Is this a world you see a place you could tell more stories in? Do you have an overall kind of arc of where you want things to go, or is it kind of something pop in your head and you think actually that'd be a good Jade City story to tell?
So the main trilogy, the Green Bone Saga, is complete. That's the story that I wanted to tell. And I'm having fun adding on little pieces to it because the novella came about from the publisher at Subterranean Press and the editor saying, hey, will you write us a novella? And I was at that point in the thick of writing a 250,000 word trilogy ending novel. And said, a novella sounds delightful. 40,000 words, it's like 4 chapters. So I was just absolutely enamored with the idea of writing something short, and the idea of writing a story with different characters in the same world that explored sort of a different perspective. And it's sort of a noir mystery, so it's if the Green Bone Saga is The Godfather, this is like Chinatown. So I just had fun doing that. And then while I was finishing up Jade Legacy, I just frankly didn't want to leave the world yet, and I ended up writing a bunch of short stories that I'd released on Patreon. So I've been playing around, adding little things to it. But I don't see it as turning into the multiverse. I mean, people have asked, are you going to do another trilogy in the world? No, I don't have plans to do that right now. I'll never say never, but I have other ideas, other projects that I want to get to. And the Green Bone Saga is the story of that generation of characters that I set out to tell. And I'm, as much as I love to stay in that world and to be with those characters, I also really like stories that end.
Yeah.
I'm one of these readers who I struggle to commit or to start things, even watching TV series these days. Like, I don't want to start a series until I know there's a satisfactory
place. That's what annoys me so much about stuff getting cancelled super early. And I'm like, well, I don't even know if I want to watch it now if I know it doesn't even get wrapped up properly.
I completely agree. It's a bit hypocritical of me, because as an author, I'm like, no, don't wait for the next books. Go out, buy my book now.
That's right.
As a consumer, I'm like, oh no, I'm waiting. I want to make sure this thing's going to end
so true.
in a satisfactory way. So I completely understand where readers are coming from, those who want to wait. And that was actually factored a lot into the pressure that I felt to finish the trilogy within a reasonable amount of time, because that's what I would want. I also just selfishly very much wanted to be satisfied with a complete story.
Well, it's definitely a complete story, and also in the world of fantasy books, finishing the trilogy at any point is
right.
quite an achievement these days.
Yes.
But we were talking about TV there. The Green Bone Saga is in development. Is it still in development for TV?
It is.
Yeah. And
so it's been
optioned.
Yeah. It's in I guess what we call development hell, which is this indeterminate amount of time in which it is in development. There has been progress, so it was optioned for development at Peacock, and it has had a couple of scripts written. So the pilot script was written. based on the pilot script. The second episode was written, so it is now sitting on an executive's desk, waiting for someone to throw a bucket of money at it. And as the author, all I can do is not that different from what readers and viewers can do, which is cross my fingers. And
I mean, I genuinely think I'm amazed it hasn't been snapped up. It's the perfect sort of thing for a streaming service, I would have thought, the story to tell, but hopefully it will be. Hopefully we'll see it soon.
Well, the creative team certainly thinks so.
Excellent.
So we'll have to keep our fingers crossed.
Awesome. And you've also got Untethered Sky, which has just been announced. Is there anything you can tell us about that?
It is a standalone novella. I really did just spend this past year writing short things because I think I needed to reset my brain. What happened was, so I've written a standalone novel, then a duology, then an epic fantasy trilogy. And I thought, at this rate, the next thing I'm going to write is like, the 10-book.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm not exactly. I'm like, this is not a trajectory that I want to be on. So I really went the other direction, and I wrote that Green Bone Saga novella, Jade Setter of Janloon, and I wrote a number of short stories, which are coming out. A couple of them are coming out this year, and then I wrote Untethered Sky. So I've written. It's weird because 2021, I thought, gosh, I didn't write a novel, but I ended up like writing 2 novellas and a bunch of shorts, which altogether kind of ended up being about the word count of a novella. But Untethered Sky was a project that I started before I wrote the Green Bone Saga.
Right.
It's funny with just the way projects work out. Nothing ever dies. Like you hear about writers putting out books that they've been working on for 12 years or what have not, because you have ideas that you start working on and then you set them aside and you work on something else, but that idea doesn't leave and you come back to it eventually. So Untethered Sky is as an example of that, where I started writing it and I liked the idea, but I wasn't quite sure where it was going, and I set it aside. And I still really liked the premise, but I didn't, just kind of shelved it for a while. And I was at Worldcon a few years back, and an editor at Tor.com, Jonathan Strawn, sat down with me over breakfast, and he was like, I love Jade City. Have you ever thought about writing a novella? And I was like, no, but sounds lovely. And he said, well, here, novellas are doing really well, and here's, some examples. If you ever have an idea that you think would work well for a novella, let me know. And so I came back to that story and thought, actually, this would really work well as a novella if I changed a bunch of things. And it ended up being like almost a complete rewrite, because something that sounds easy when you first conceive of it, you're like, I'll just turn this into a novella, is like never as easy as you think it's going to be. But it's very different from Green Bone Saga. It was a way for me to kind of stretch in a different direction. I feel like that is a great for me personally, that is the role of short fiction, because my big projects are such a huge investment in terms of time and effort. The Green Bone Saga has taken up 7 years of my life, and something that can be written and finished within a few months is where I can play. It really feels like just exploration and almost like a vacation for me. It's a nice palate cleanser. It's a way to do things that I wouldn't necessarily commit to doing in a epic trilogy. And so I'm really looking forward to it, and I'm excited for. I think there's the cover art's going to be fantastic. I'm really
brilliant.
Looking forward.
Nice.
Looking forward to it. And would you ever want to, is novels where you want to, or novellas, novels, is prose where you want to stay, or would you be interested ever in writing a graphic novel or a screenplay or anything like that?
I've written some comics. So I did a stint writing for Marvel, and I really enjoyed learning how to write comics and write in that graphic medium. Storytelling is storytelling. So if you have the mind for doing it in one medium, in my opinion, it's not that hard to transfer those skills into another medium. You just have to learn the actual practical techniques of doing that. But I found it very fun and easy to move into writing comics. I also don't see myself doing that as a career shift. My heart is very much in prose. And I've been asked before, would you want to write screenplays? And screenplays actually and comic scripts have some similarities to them, because you're working in visual mediums. And the wonderful thing about working in comics was seeing how quickly it came to fruition. Like a monthly comic. I mean, I'm used to working on projects and like no one bothering me for a year. And then the book comes out like another year after that. And with comics, I write the script, I send in the pages. A couple weeks later, our line art comes back and it's amazing. And like a few weeks after that, it's like you just have you're working on like final proofing, and then and then it's done. It's amazingly fast and satisfying. So it was a nice change of pace. But my heart is really in prose and in novels, and I see that kind of being the bread and butter of my career, and then perhaps like branching out here and there and doing a few, keeping it fresh for myself. I think it's important as an author to keep yourself challenged and motivated and still doing things new, even in the same medium. Like even in novels, I think, well, what am I going to do different in my next project that's going to be exciting and fresh and challenging for me, but hopefully still appeal to
it's that we're back to that sort of fresh but the same kind of thing that publishers are wanting there. And sorry, Derek, on you go.
I was just going to ask, what's next? What else are you working on? What that is unannounced that you can share with us for the first time and have a exclusive announcement?
I wish I could, but I haven't even shown my editor what I'm working on next.
Fair enough.
Would not be fair for me to do that. But I'm working on another project. It's right now I've got a science fiction concept that I'm excited about, and that will hopefully, if all goes well, be my next novel project. So I am
cool.
I'm in the thick of that right now. More to come.
Excellent.
Nice.
What was the last book that you read?
The last book I read was Shogun by James Clavell.
Nice.
A classic. And I always try to read in my genre and out of my genre. So I try to kind of swap back and forth a little bit and make sure I'm obviously science fiction and fantasy is my home. And so I'm always going to read quite a bit in there. But I get so much inspiration from outside of the genre as well. Like you can tell the Green Bone Saga is highly influenced by gangster stories and crime drama. So I was on a little bit of a historical fiction kick. So I decided to tackle Shogun. And it's a great read. So that's the last thing that I read.
Awesome. I've got the first 2 books of that series on my Kindle, which I've not read yet, but I've been looking for some time. I know they're massive books, but
they are. They made me feel a bit better because I thought, well, okay, my book
not
is
the only one.
1,200 pages long.
Exactly. What about the last film that you watched?
What was the last film that I watched? I think the last film I watched was Don't Look Up.
All right. Okay.
Yeah.
That was my last one. Right now, I am watching the final season of Attack on Titan.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I watched the first season of that, loved it, and I've not watched anything else past that. I need to get back to it. Yeah.
Oh, you do. You really do. It just gets more everything, more intense, more complex, more. It's
on my to watch list, but I've not watched any of it yet.
It's very good.
Yeah.
Again, that's a very good blend of like kind of medieval stuff, but with kind of sci-fi, giant people. It kind of mishmashes a few genres together.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's a mech story, but in a fantasy setting that's kind of got, but there's also, I'm not going to spoil anything. You just go watch it.
Yeah, excellent.
Well, that's the main stuff we do, but we always finish a podcast with a super quick fire either or. So I always say there's no right answer apart from one, but we'll start off with fantasy or sci-fi.
Oh goodness, I can't choose this.
It's fine. You're allowed to sit on the fence if you want.
Yeah, I really do. I feel like they are two sides of a coin.
Yeah.
And I like to sit right in the middle, straddling the sides of the coin. If you forced me to choose, I would lean towards science fiction. And I think you can see that even in my epic fantasy, that there's a strong element, a science fictional edge to it.
Yeah. Godfather or Goodfellas?
You guys. Godfather.
We ask the tough questions.
Godfather because of Godfather Part 2, which I am lumping in to the first category.
Yeah.
TV or cinema?
Oh gosh. Cinema. And the reason is because I still love the experience of going to the movie theater. I know that in the pandemic times, everyone just sits down and streams stuff, but
it's not the same, is it?
It's not the same. I love going to the theater. I'm one of those people who, if I had a free day, I just go to the cinema and watch like 3 movies in a row. So I love that experience. I still love the big screen and going to the theater. There's so much good stuff on television, though. It's hard. That I think television is where you see so much great writing these days, and so that makes it a hard choice. But when the cinema experience is good, that's what I would go with.
Yeah, nice.
Night owl or early bird?
Oh, night owl. I mean, now I'm not really either. I used to be more of a night owl, but now I get tired early. I don't know. It's very disappointing because so what's happened? So I am by nature more of a night owl, but I'm forced by family circumstance to wake up early. And so that's eaten away at my natural night owl ability. And so now I'm just kind of like a chronically fatigued night owl, if that makes sense.
That makes sense.
Yes, but a night owl. I have a lot of inertia. I find it hard to wake up in the morning, but I also find it hard to go to sleep at night. I always trying to do something else at night.
I'm terrible at the what's the phrase they have for it? Sleep procrastination. I'll sort of sit there and look at nothing of importance on my phone rather than go to my bed and sleep.
I am the same way. It is a terrible habit. I am trying to stop myself from doing that, but I relate very hard.
And the last one, real book or ebook?
Real book.
Hesitation in that one.
In a 0. I do have an appreciation for my e-reader that I did not have quite as much before, but I've now realized that like it is just super handy and portable for traveling, and so I like being able to carry it around with me. But there's just no accounting for like the kinesthetic satisfaction of the real book. The cover and flipping the pages and cracking the spine.
It's sort of like the TV cinema thing again, I think. Like sitting down with a real book, if you've got time, is like being at the cinema watching a big.
That's quite a good analogy, movie. Actually. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. But now
that's a wrong answer, I'm afraid. That correct answer is ebook. You got that one wrong.
So I got 3 out of 4 right? Is that
something like that, exactly.
But you know what I will do?
You sat the fence for one as well, so you did pretty badly this one.
I will say though, my habits, ebooks have changed my purchasing habits in the sense that I will now usually get the ebook first. Like I used to always want to, but shelf space is at a premium these days.
Yeah, totally.
So I will get the ebook first or borrow the ebook. And then if I really want it on the shelf, then I go out and buy the hard copy after the fact.
Okay.
Nice.
That sounds like an ebook answer to me. I'm going to put that down as an ebook.
Tarek is a big ebook advocate, as you'll tell.
Yeah.
And all of our guests
desperately trying to find
always say
people
real books, so it's a big disappointment for him.
Oh, well, but you didn't ask audiobook, which would have thrown another wrench into the
that's
question.
true. That's true. Yeah.
Audiobooks. I've definitely got into audiobooks recently.
Yeah, I think lockdowns really got me into them more than it did prior, but yeah, they are great audiobooks.
Yeah.
That was a really, really interesting chat. I really enjoyed that. It was great hearing the number of influences that have come to make Jade City a reality. It's such a fascinating mash of all these different strands. It's done such a great job putting them together.
And I thought what was really interesting as well was, it seems obvious to point this out, but I'm sure when you're in the trenches, as it were, as an author, but it doesn't need to be that first book that makes you the bestseller.
Yeah.
Absolutely. With Fonda, it was her third book that really broke through for her, and even then, it was this kind of slow burn before it really picked up speed. But I think there can be this pressure on the authors will give themselves on this first book that if it doesn't become a bestseller, then suddenly it's a failure and all the time has been wasted and all this.
And we've chatted to so many authors who it's been their third, fifth, 12th book that for some reason it's just really resonated, it's connected, it's come out at the right time, and so never. I think the important thing, as you say, is never give up. It's just because your first book doesn't make the number one New York Times.
Getting published is a huge deal, and that's something that you should always be proud of, and is a massive achievement, and you mustn't let it put you down if the sales aren't like in the tens of thousands and things like that.
The important thing is that you're able to write what you want to write, and that's the goal. Definitely.
Well, thanks very much to Fonda for coming on to the podcast. Really enjoyed chatting to her, and I'm really looking forward to the novella set in the Green Bone Saga world, as well as the other novella she was talking about, Untethered Sky. So it sounds like she's got a lot of exciting projects coming up.
Yeah, definitely.
Now, as we mentioned at the start of the podcast, we are announcing the competition winners of our recent competition. So there's a whole selection of books. You'll have seen maybe on our social media the video of all the books that are available. 3 winners will win a sort of selection of those books each, and a signed book by Ian Rankin and a signed page 1 notebook. And
the real prize, really.
Yeah, and then 2 runners-up
what people are entering
will win a signed page 1 notebook each. So, Tarek, do you want to tell us who's won the books and the notebook?
Yes, so the winners of the selection of books, the signed Ian Rankin novel and the signed page 1 are Gillian Mackay, Simon Stevenson and Caroline Chapman. So congratulations to all you guys. Well done.
Congratulations to you, and we'll be in touch just to arrange for those to be sent out. And the winners of the notebooks are Polizio Turner and R. Gilmore. So, as I say, we'll be in touch with all of the winners to get the addresses that we should be sending these prizes to. And thanks very much for
thank you very much for everyone who entered, and for those who were unsuccessful, don't worry, there's plenty of page 1s in stock. I'm happy to sign them if you want it signed. Marco could sign them.
Exactly.
Tim, the boss man, can sign them if you want.
And you know, Tarek, how you can get a discount on your page 1?
How? Tell me more, Marco.
You can sign up to our newsletter on our website. So
interesting.
If you sign up to the newsletter, you'll get a bit of a summary of some of the recent writing advice some of our authors have been giving, along with a discount code for page 1, and also a bit of information on what we've been reading and watching and things like that. So if you want to do that, that's a good way to get a discount on the notebooks. But before we move on, we should let people know who's on next week's guest, because it's another great guest.
Yeah, we do indeed. As always, next week we're chatting with Ben Aranovich, who's an English author, screenwriter. He's written some Doctor Who novels, Blake Seven novels, but perhaps most famously at the moment is his Rivers of London series of novels, which are pretty huge. Yeah, really huge.
Yeah, it was good fun chatting with Ben, just hearing about where that quite unique idea came from, and
very unique.
You know, how it's spawned this massive success. Really, it's become not just a book franchise; it's a comic franchise. There's talk of a TV show. You know, it's really, it could be. I mean, it's exploded anyway, but it could explode even further in the near future.
Yeah. For those that don't know, it's am I right in saying it's kind of like the gods are the rivers of London and the UK?
The sort of personification of the rivers, the real people and characters, and these sort of magic police, if I'm using air quotes there, interact with them and solve crimes with the help or sometimes with the hindrance of these rivers.
It's a very interesting setup, I have to say.
Yeah, no, it's unique, definitely unique. But I think, you know, people that are fans of things like American Gods by Neil Gaiman and things like that.
Yeah, it's very similar to that kind of idea
sort
of taking
idea,
something and making
but
it
maybe
into
a slightly more
God.
light-hearted take on it all, I would say. But yeah. So yeah, that's next week's guest. And before we go, if you enjoyed this episode, if you wanted to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or whatever your favourite podcast app is, that would be really helpful to us to continue to get these great guests on the podcast.
And of course, if anybody wants to get in touch, they can always drop us a tweet in the Twitter machine, which is at UKPage1, and they can send us an email, which is podcast@rightgear.co.uk.
Yeah, and the only other thing I'm going to say is that I mentioned our YouTube channel, which we did neglect for a long time.
But we're back.
We're back. So we're slowly uploading all of our previous episodes, audio only for most of them, but we're putting those up onto YouTube. So if that's your preferred way of listening, then soon all of the back catalogue should be up there. And we're hoping to have more video episodes in the near future as well.
Yeah, we've got some very exciting things in the pipeline, which we'll talk to you about at a later date.
Indeed. We'll keep that as a surprise at the moment, because it's largely a surprise to us as well.
I don't know what we're doing.
Yeah. But otherwise, have a great week, and we hope to see you next episode.
See you later.
Well, we hope you enjoyed that episode. If you did, be sure to hit that thumbs up button and hit the subscribe button so you never miss an episode like these ones down here.
And if you want to get in touch, you can do so by finding us on our social media platforms up here, or drop us a comment way down below there.
But otherwise, thanks for listening, and join us for the next episode.
See you later.